So what did you guys talk about?
Well, we talked a lot about what she was going through. A lot of, I guess, social anxiety, which surprised me because she was someone that I see as, she's someone that I want to be like. You know what I mean? Like someone that I kind of look up to as like a female, I guess, persona.
Did you become her friend because she was a role model?
No.
Okay. Was she the cool kid?
No, neither.
Okay, so I'm trying to contextualize what you meant by that.
Right. I just like her style. I like the kind of person that she is. I like the things that she's interested in.
Yeah, she's dope.
So anytime that she shares about like struggling about anything, I'm always just like, you? But I want to be like you. How do you? Yeah. So it was really nice to catch up and kind of hear what she's going through. And she was talking about like social anxiety, and a lot of it is happening at work too.
Despite being a pretty extroverted person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why I was surprised that she was going through this. And especially the work part just reminded me of when I was going through panic attacks at work. And just how awful that feeling is. And it just takes over in the sense of like even Sunday night. And or even all of Sunday.
Yeah.
Before you even start, you can't even enjoy your time off because you're worried about what's going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
You're not even there.
So that actually, so before we even were like getting into parts where you like knew obviously about this world before I was thrust into it. You definitely went through a bunch of that with your work to the point where you saw and talked to people about it, right? Like you saw professionals about it.
Yeah, no choice. Yeah. I basically was working in a call center, and you know how those, it's stats driven, performance driven. And I had a really hard time with that aspect of things. I guess because there was that aspect of sales to it, which was especially uncomfortable for me. But yeah, I just started having panic attacks out of the blue. Actually, the first one happened when we came back from Japan.
That's why I was thinking of that. I was thinking of that, yeah. and I was going to bring that up, but I didn't think that was the first one. I thought that was like the most poignant one, because I feel like you were kind of building up sort of just a negative like feeling going to work
for sure
for a while before that. And from what I remember, at least, like it was kind of just like there's a point that you hit, which is a point that I'm very familiar with and was at the time, at least, which is like, fuck me, I gotta go to work, right? Like the feeling of like, I cannot take going into this place anymore. It is everything I don't want, right? And
it takes everything for you to be able to.
It takes everything for you to get up and go there in the morning, right? And then once you get there, you can sufficiently do your job and like forget about it almost. And then when you check out, it's just like, thank fucking God, it's the best feeling in the world. And then the next morning, it's the exact same thing. Yeah. And I remember that. And, but like, yeah, when we went to Japan the first time and came back, and then like, it was like 2 weeks of like fucking just having fun and checking out this another world, you know?
And then I was looking for it. It was keeping me going. You know what I mean? Knowing that I had this 2-week break, and I'd never taken a vacation like that before in my life. You know, I'd gone to Cuba on March break in high school, so I did get that. But otherwise, when we went to Japan, it was 5 or 6 years after, like, living as an adult, and I spent all my breaks going home. You know, it's just like, if I have vacation, I live a province away from my family and a lot of my friends. So I would spend the majority of my time there. And I never really thought, like, what can I do for fun?
That was the default, was just that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So the combination of, wow, I'm doing something for myself. And it's the first time I'm doing something like this, kind of. And I hate this job. And I really cannot wait to have this 2-week break. And then even in Japan, just like, oh shit, we're going back home soon. Oh no. Oh no, there's only 4 days left. Oh no, there's only 3 days left. Oh no, there's only 2 days left tomorrow.
You kept it pretty hidden.
Yeah.
At the time.
Yeah. You mean in Japan?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I always have those kinds of thoughts in terms of even when I would go home visit my extended family in New Brunswick.
Yeah.
I'm the kind of person, I would be the worst person to have a terminal illness because everything will be like, this is the last time in the fall on a Sunday that I'm going to get to do this thing. I'm not in the moment. And constantly, because I have 2 sides of my family, we just know so many people there. I'm like, this is the last campfire I'm going to have with these people.
Okay,
this is my last breakfast with Pipar. Oh,
yeah.
So in Japan, that same kind of thought is happening, but I've
learned... Even though we went back.
But, I'm going to go home now and I won't get to do this.
Yeah.
So I've learned to try to put those thoughts away because I know it pulls me away from the moment. What?
So this is fucking morbid, but yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. I've got to work on that. But yeah, that thought was there. So obviously it's easier to put aside. But when there's 2 days left, 1 day left, then it's like, okay, now it's reality, and then it becomes harder. Yeah.
And then upon actually getting back, it was like the ultimate hyper concentrated version of waking up in the morning and going back to work because it's coming off of the high that is 2 weeks in fucking Japan. Yeah. Yeah.
So no, that was for sure my first panic attack there because I remember being there and I had to go see the supervisors. And they said, you want to go home? And I remember thinking I can't. If I set this pattern,
how do you keep it going?
Yeah, I was just so scared. If I go home, well, the pattern, yes, but also I'm scared of doing this job.
Yeah.
So if I go home, I'm just putting off this panic attack. I'm scheduling it in for tomorrow instead.
Right.
So, yeah.
Do you remember what, how as the I feel like I'm going to repeat the point, but it's the anxiety you're feeling lives in the past and the future. It's impossible for it to be in the present moment because it's just either fear of an anticipation, a fear of something that's coming, or...
Well, I would say depression is the past, anxiety is the future.
Okay.
As in, you feel down about shit that's happened and you play it over in your head over and over again.
Okay.
And then in the future, you're just like, oh God, what could happen to me?
But it's what's going to happen. Yeah, right. But it's definitely not what's at the...
It's not present.
Present tense, right?
But it's hard because then at the same time, that's the thoughts that trigger the panic feeling, the fight or flight system. Yeah. And then you're in the fucking present moment and you're like, oh God, this is so uncomfortable.
Definitely. But what causes the chain reaction to start is the thought of something that's upcoming.
Yeah.
Do you remember at the time it was getting to work, but when you got there, do you remember what it was?
It's just that I had changed departments by that time and I had to work different hours. When I first got in, I would work 7 p.m. till midnight. It's pretty chill. Not too bad. Now I was working... I had to be there Mondays in the morning because they had the most calls in the mornings on Mondays because it was a different service. So all this to say, it was especially just the rhythm of the work.
So it was just a change in
back
hours.
to back to back.
Yeah.
Calls. At least before when I worked in the evenings, it wasn't so busy, or if there was busy periods, you could breathe. Here you could not breathe. The whole shift was call, customer service voice. You got to be happy. You got to be cheery. You got to be helpful. I can't be myself. I can't breathe. And they have these telephone systems that measure everything. So you could only be disconnected from your phone 2% of the time. So even if I go pause, fuck, I just need to breathe. I can't do that for that long because
And so like,
you know,
well, just something like that is like, when you're fine with what you're doing, that is the most minor thing, because it's just a shift change, right? It's like a super small detail that you go from, oh, I prefer working this time, but now I'm doing this time, and that changes this aspect of it. But because it's like magnified by not wanting to be there, because it's multiplied by like, you know, the all the other stressors of like doing this type of job as opposed to what you wanted to do at the time.
Yes.
Right. When you have a moment from like, oh, I'm in a state of like, fine, I can do this type of shift and feel horrible, and then this smallest thing gets more difficult, it ends up being a tectonic shift, right? Yeah. Where it's that much more weight behind what, because when you break it down, right, it's like a shift change and an uptick in workload on its own, again, in any other situation, is not at all something that would be like massive life crisis mode feeling event. But in this case, it just happened to build to that because of the circumstances surrounding it.
Well, and there were so many things going on too, in the sense that like when I was at the first department, it was I worked for a credit union. So it was just a general phone number. So when people call, they've already put in their card number. So you already see the file. And there was like some sales to do, even though it was customer service. But that was attainable because you were already in there. So you could see like, dude, you're paying way too much in credit card fees if you just spend $50 right now and change your card and buy a different card, then you can get massive, anyways, you could just see it. All this to say, in the other one, it wasn't like that at all. It was harder to make sales. It was so much harder. And I already wasn't doing that great in the first department. And then now I go to the second department and it's even harder. And now there's more calls. So I'm already not feeling great about where I'm at there. Like I need to get coached to try to like bring up my shit.
Okay. So there's higher requirements of you as well in the switch up.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And
I was also dealing with just like fucking depression. You know what I mean? Like I already was going in like,
like that's the kind of thing though, is like, I feel like there was a cascading series of like events and things that kind of happened in the way that like, at least when you were telling me about it the first time, that were affecting it.
Yeah.
And like, it certainly wasn't just like, oh no, it wasn't just like, oh no, I got called in for the other shift. Like it was not that simple.
No.
There was a bunch of other shit on your plate at the time. And that just was it was a camel breaking the straw's back / like a single domino.
Yeah.
Right. Because looking at it now from a distance objectively in this way where you're like, this is what you had to do and this is what you now have to do, it doesn't seem that large. But like at the time there was a lot of other things you were talking about.
I was already trying very hard to keep it together and to be positive and to try hard. So then trying hard now in this new job was like just adding that much more difficulty.
And ultimately you don't have control over what causes those feelings anyway. Right. And even when they feel possibly overblown, it doesn't really make it go down in a way.
Right.
And at that point, like, yeah, I remember it started becoming a every Monday on the Monday thing.
Because all the other days I worked in the evening, so it was less busy. So I could pump myself up. I had time to be like, okay, you can get ready for this next call. But then I didn't have that break. So yeah, so Mondays were always the worst.
And, yeah, and then that, of course, like when you actually talk to someone professional about it, like they kind of broke down like what that was exactly.
Yeah, I suppose so. Well, I guess what happened in my brain in the chronological order was just that then they saw that I wasn't achieving the percentage of how much time I'm supposed to be on my phone because I had to disconnect to like breathe through these panic attacks. And my boss was like, okay, starting tomorrow, you have to hit these. And it was just like no consideration for how this works and how change works, which was disappointing for me. But yeah, so I just kind of went to my therapist like, okay, I know I've been talking about this, but because I was already seeing her at the time. But it's like, okay, now I need to bring it into high gear and I need to find tricks and Like I literally, in my little book that I would use, the first page was just like, I had the list of things that I had to do to like pump myself up to feel better. And a lot of it is just self-confidence and performance. Just wanting to like do a good job and being hard on myself. And
yeah, you started meditating around that time.
Yes. Yeah. I started meditating. I started, I guess, decatastrophizing my thoughts. So one technique in the other type of CBT is to have a thought journal. So I had a thought journal. So every time I saw the hour was close to either 9, 12, 3, 6, anyways, those hours, I'd write down what is the thought that you have in your brain? How can you see it differently? And that helped me get conscious of my thoughts more, to catch myself thinking like, oh no, this is going to be awful. They could tell that I'm not doing well. They can hear the tremble in my voice, or they can sense that I'm not good at this or whatever. And then the meditation also helps with that, because you're just practicing like having conscious of what you're thinking of and practicing letting it go.
Meditation and medication.
And then medication too. That was a wild thing, was how much that was really helpful. Because it's such a scary leap. You know what I mean? Like,
it's a pretty extreme jump, and it always has. Well, coming from a family of people that are, my family isn't anti-doctor. That would be an extreme. But there's definitely a sort of like, okay, let's try, before we go to this step, let's try prayer.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. That's how they were about it. So yeah, all that to say that like a step towards being like, here's a prescription is a large leap.
For sure. It's like, how's this going to affect me? Is this going to change me forever? Am I going to become dependent on this?
Will you still be able to write music?
Exactly. You know it. You feel me.
She doesn't write music. That's a joke. That's a joke.
No creative bone.
Go.
In this body. Yeah. But I mean, it felt like my job depended on it, right? Because I explained to my boss what was going on, but I guess he got, anyways, he has to be a boss. He's like, okay, we'll start tomorrow. So that's what it was. I was putting into practice those tips, that sheet of paper that I had with my therapist. I had that written down. It's when my boss told me like, okay, this has to stop. That's when I was like, okay, well, I need the next step, because
it wasn't enough at the time.
It wasn't enough at the time. And what this kind of medication did for me, it's a kind of medication that you take like for panic attacks, when you take it when you need it. There's other medication that helps dampen anxiety in general.
What was it again?
Xanax.
Right.
And then there's another one, or another class of drugs that just, okay, just in general, you're always going to have less anxiety, but this was for like those acute moments.
Right.
So it was so helpful, because even just having that prescription, that first Sunday, I'm like, I don't have to freak out. I can enjoy this Sunday, because I know that tomorrow, if I have a panic attack, at worst is going to last maybe an hour, because I want to give myself an honest shot of, let me do the first half hour of the shift with nothing. Maybe I can calm myself down. If that doesn't work, then I'll take it. It takes 20 minutes to work or whatever. So just the thought of, I only have to suffer for an hour tomorrow. Like, that's amazing. I'm so excited to only suffer for that 1 hour. I can chill today. I don't have to worry about tomorrow.
When you were first talking to them about it, did they give you like the plan with an exit strategy at the same time?
It was more like, let's take it step by step
and see how it goes. Yeah. Okay.
So sort of like, let's start you off with the like most basic. Actually, the very first step was, why don't you try propranolol? It's not addictive. It just calms the anxiety of the performance anxiety part of things.
Yeah.
Because it's a medication that blocks, I guess, that blocks the stress hormones.
See, that's what I remember.
No, you're right. But that didn't help me. So I forgot about it.
Oh, okay.
That was the first step.
Because I was kind of, just now I was kind of like, what about the propranolol? Yeah, right.
Yeah, so the first step was propranolol. They prescribe it sometimes to musicians who get the shakes, and it just kind of calms those shakes. It doesn't like work on your brain. is a way to explain it. Like it mostly works on the effects you have on your body.
And you have to do it in advance in anticipation of when it'll happen.
You can do it like while it happens too.
Oh, I thought you told me that was something that had to be taken in advance of it.
I think you're
versus
thinking...
like in reaction to it. But maybe I'm mixing it up.
I forget. I could be mixing it up because when I did that research,
you fucking studied it. You literally.
Because I worked in this lab that studied propranolol.
Yeah.
But for that, we did have to give it in advance for a specific procedure. But now I forget for mine if I had to take it in advance. I didn't take it for very long because after a month, it was like, okay, this isn't working.
You were like writing peer-reviewed papers about it.
Okay.
Like, I mean...
Okay, but that was for memory reconsolidation.
Okay.
It's not the same.
Okay.
So that was the first step. And then it was the Xanax. And then it was like, okay, just take half or whatever. I don't remember. And it's been a while now. And it's just like, okay, then see me in a month or 3 weeks or whatever. Let's see how it goes. And then do we need to readjust from there?
And at some point that faded out pretty much.
I was surprised how little I needed it. Just the fact that I had it on me made me feel way more calm.
That's an interesting side effect that I didn't think of at the time, where it's like you have like the gun with the bullet loaded, so to speak. So that on its own is enough to like be whatchamacallit.
I don't gotta shoot it.
Yeah, well, not an incentive as much as whatever. You get the point. Yeah. Analogy fell apart when I lose my words because I fucking can't put them together. Anyway.
Yeah, so I guess that was helpful. And 2, of course, I would have loved to have this experience. A deterrent, yeah.
Thank you.
I would have loved to have the realizations without medication. It'd be great to... Obviously, it's always great to rely on yourself. However, the experience that I had with the medication was, I'm not that scared of this. I'm scared of the panic attack. Like, yes, there's things about my job that I don't like, but ultimately, like, it's not panic attack inducing. It was just the fact that I had that first one that kind of set this memory that I was just like, oh shit, it's going to happen again. Oh, I hope it doesn't happen. Oh God, it's happening.
And I remember like when I was hearing about it, and I was like, yeah, isn't that, I'm like, I don't know too much about this. But like, isn't that name that's like overprescribed / that you hear about often as something that like is just like super duper prevalent?
What name?
Xanax.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Yes.
And because you hear about that, and you hear about, what's the other one? It's like everyone takes it.
Oh shit, I don't know. I feel like Xanax is the one that I think.
I think it's like, does Pfizer make that?
I don't know.
Okay.
You're not thinking of the opiates.
What's the brand?
Fentanyl. Oh wait.
What's the brand name?
Purdue Pharma. You're thinking about them?
No. What's the brand name of like what's another very popular
Ativan?
type of pill? No, that's not it either. All right. You know what? This is falling apart. Anyway, all I know is that like I've heard about like 2 types of things that are just like hyper prescribed, right? One of them is Xanax, and the other one is
like Ritalin, Adderall.
Adderall is used a lot by students.
Yeah. I think you're thinking of that.
Geez. Yeah.
There's so many pharmaceuticals.
You know what?
There.
It's gone. It's fine.
It's over.
It's not going to work. I'm doing a quick search. Yeah. Okay. Yes. OxyContin, Vicodin, Adderall.
Okay.
Those things are the things you hear a lot about. You also hear about Percocet every once in a while.
Oh, true.
Not as much per se. That's what I meant. Yes.
Right.
So like, you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I know. So, yeah, for sure. I mean, I was trying to think of other. So Xanax, if I'm not mistaken, is a benzodiazepine. It's a class of drugs. I was trying to think of other benzos.
Oh, okay.
So that's why, like,
No. I mean, across the entire board.
Yeah.
This is what you hear about all the time.
Yeah. Well, opiates is the biggest one. So fentanyl and Percocet. Oxycontin. Like that's the like epidemic that's happening right now.
Yeah, like painkiller things, for sure.
Exactly. And then benzos are also a dangerous one because just biologically they're addictive.
Yeah.
So you need to start taking more. And if you don't withdraw from them properly, they are like one of the medications that can cause death from withdrawal. So if you and because they become addictive, you can start taking more and more, and then take it recreationally.
And what about psychostimulants for students?
I feel like that too, but to be honest, yeah, I haven't read that much about it. I should, because I'm doing an internship in a rehab right now, but I'm working with families, so I'm not seeing the addiction side as much. But yeah, I'm not sure about the like amphetamine class of things.
Okay, well, like tangent aside, it was just like I just remember I'm like Xanax. That's that thing you hear about a lot as something that people can like
100%.
super abuse, you know. 100%. So you're like, oh, what about that? You know? But
and that's why I was happy that my psychiatrist did offer an alternative first with the propranolol. He wasn't just like, here you go, this will get you out my office, you'll be fine with this.
And then at some point, like, yeah, you said it just became like a loaded gun, you know, where you're just like, okay, cool, like this is there, and that in and of itself gives your mind enough reason to be like, okay, relax, like, yeah, what's the point?
And it gives me the gift of having a shift at work without panic to see like, what is the reality? Yeah. Now that I'm not panicking, what is this like? How scary is this really? How much? Yeah, just kind of see it with more neutral, fresh eyes, and not panicked eyes that are just jumping at every little thing that is telling you alert, 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 like dangers everywhere, you know?
Now, that being said, you still have to get the fuck out of there. Yes. Right? And it helps to be able to do that with a clear head.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Right? You need to put your blocks together and, you know, make your moves. But
because you are definitely just so exhausted that when you come home,
you can't think about anything else. Yeah. But, I'd say like, it's almost tempting in some cases to just be like, okay, problem solved. Now let's ride that out. And it's like, no, you still need to change your environment. You still are going to continue to feel negatively about existing here. Yes. But now this like is not going to make it soul crushing.
Yeah. The illustration that sometimes we use with medication is to say, right now you're drowning in the water. If I just yell at you, just kick your legs. You know what I mean? Just swim. It's not going to help because you're just panicking and you're drowning. So if you give someone a life, like a buoy or whatever, then they can get their head above water and just breathe and then hear your instructions. And then you can take away that buoy, then they can swim on their own. Yeah. So it's kind of that idea, like, take this medication.
Grab onto something.
And I'll help you get your head above water. And then while you're in therapy, now you are calm enough that you can actually apply the things that they're teaching you.
Right. And like, and at that moment of like being worried about it, when you first consider taking it, it's like, okay, but what's the alternative? Yeah. Right. Fucking drowning.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, exactly. Yeah, that's a pretty good analogy, actually. So, to like fucking rewind the tape on that, you were talking to your friend.
Yeah. Well, this is a pretty good illustration, giving an idea of what my life was like before, where I had to take like drastic measures and, okay, let me see a psychiatrist. I have to watch this medication thing now. I have to apply these different techniques and have this little binder and really, like, literally I was writing a thought journal every 3 hours. You know what I mean? And meditating
intense.
Yeah. So all this to say, like, I really had to work hard on this. And now now hear my friend talk about similar struggles, and she is well working very hard on this. It's just reminding me that kind of like, right now I feel like I'm stagnating because so far things feel pretty like chilled out, relatively speaking. Like I am going to school and working at the same time. Like I am juggling a lot of stuff, but I don't feel depressed. I don't feel anxious outside of like healthy stress right now. But there's still things that are bothering me about my life. And because they just kind of bother me, I'm not really doing anything about it. It's just this little internal monologue of, oh, yeah, I should do this. Oh, yeah, that should get better. And I don't know, talking to her, I guess it kind of cemented this thing like, I really feel like I think I'm just coasting. Like she was just talking about doing like she was talking about her bedtime routine and journaling and doing this stuff. And I remember I feel like I used to be way more in the present moment before. And now I really don't feel present. I feel like I'm just, because I do have a lot going on in my life, I kind of just feel like I'm on a treadmill and I'm just running. And I don't ever feel like I'm catching up on anything.
So what would help you feel what would help you feel more in the present?
This is such a small thing, but I think I'm going to take a break from podcasts to when I'm transiting. That's
listening.
What did I say?
Take a break from podcasts.
I'm leaving right now.
Bye. Like, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like really from after one,
ladies and gentlemen,
you've hit your plateau and it's time to fucking sunset it.
This is my retirement podcast.
There you go.
I'm here to announce.
It's the victory lap and you're leaving.
Yeah. And even at that, with the whole listening thing, I mostly just want to cut out listening while I'm in transit, more or less. I feel, anyways, that's something that I can do, that I can try to be in the present, and just get back in touch with music. But yeah, so that's a little thing that I'm trying to do. You can listen to a lot of podcasts. You ever feel like, or regardless of the podcast aspect of things, do you ever feel like you're just kind of not really in the moment and you're always just like running around?
No, listening to podcasts is good. In fact, I think you should listen to as many of them as possible.
Oh, I see the light now. You are right, Woolie.
Let's move on to the next topic as we discuss how great podcasting is. The fuck are you doing?
Hey, but no, you know how much I listen to them, right?
I know exactly what you mean. And like, yeah, definitely. I have days where I like, just like, as soon as one's done, I hit the next button. Yeah. And I've gotten definitely like into the fact that it allows me to do two things at once.
Yes.
I can be entertained while doing a mundane task.
Yeah.
And there's, like everybody that people are listening to this and don't know that. You know what I mean? Like that's the magic discovery.
Yeah.
It's found time.
Mm-hmm.
Time that didn't exist before. Your life existed on one track. And it was the actions you're performing. And if this were like a video editing program, we've just inserted a different track, and it's an audio track that you can play while you do a completely different
action. And now all
of
a sudden you were doing chores and you were doing things that were labor intensive, and now you get to enjoy them.
Yep.
And it's
and I've actually opted to, in some cases, like so sometimes I'd stop and watch something while like, eating or whatever. Yep. And I've recently actually chosen to like sit and eat while listening.
Yeah, I've noticed.
And then go back to what I'm doing because I'm not going to like waste time. Like if I finish eating and I'm watching the thing, you continue watching and then maybe you do 2 or 3 and then you go to the activity that you had next. But the moment I'm done eating while listening, I just get up and go do the thing. Mm-hmm. So it actually it saves me time in a way. Like I'm able to be more productive because it will follow me into the activity in a way. I don't have filler time.
Yeah. I do that with podcasts too. When I'm like laying in bed or I can't get motivated to do a thing, like just put on the podcast. That's like you having fun, just relaxing, but now you walk on the way to do it.
Exactly. Thing. Yeah. So I've been doing that. Now, as far as like, I've stopped listening to a lot of music. As a result of that, I'd say like I've pretty much just done a lot of podcast listening.
Yeah.
And there's something to it where you're kind of like, it is true that you can feel like not in the moment. But I guess I don't feel like I have any adverse effects from being prolonged from a prolonged period of time not in the moment. Like there's nothing that it's helping me do or not do. What tends to happen is, let's say if I'm sitting on a plane and my whatever I ran out of downloads to listen to, then I'll just sit with my thoughts and I'll just think of ideas. It'll help. I'll usually just like default to like, oh, that would be a fun thing to film. That'd be a fun project to work on, a fun thing to make. And I'll start thinking of that and I'll just make notes.
Yeah.
Or if there's like, I'm going to a tournament or something, I'll try to like remember like specific scenarios for playing the game better or whatever. But like, yeah, I guess even though I do observe what you're talking about, I don't have any downsides from not doing it. So it hasn't been something I've actively thought about.
I think for me, what I would put my finger on, it doesn't really matter what the media is, because I think I have that same problem just being on my phone. But is that I don't want to spend any time with myself in a way.
Yeah, like literally, see, that's very different.
Just now, before we set up this whole thing, I got up to go to the bathroom to clip my nails, and I turned on the podcast just for that little walk, clip, come back, sit down, turn it off. That's stupid.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
You know, or if I go pee and I forget my phone, I'm just like, what the fuck am I going to do now for these 45 seconds it takes me to go pee? That's what I need to, that's why I want to be more in the present moment, because I find like,
if you're avoiding your thoughts, that's different.
Yeah, I guess that's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like there's just always a track in my head, and it's either what I'm listening to, what I'm watching, when I'm on my phone. I don't have a lot of times just not thinking of anything. And a little bit like you were saying, when you have that break, sometimes you think of ideas. I feel like maybe one of the reasons why I'm stagnating is because those empty spaces, usually when you're bored, is when I would start thinking about these other life things. So I'm trying to create more of those spaces.
Yeah. Should probably talk. I'm sure it's a whole other discussion to get into, like, why you'd want to avoid time with yourself.
Hello.
That's a whole
did I say that?
That's a whole jar to crack open.
Yeah.
But I did actually want to say that, like, it's funny because the beginning of the conversation where you were like, yeah, I was having a bit of a heart-to-heart with my friend, and you're going on, and you're going into, like, you know, how talking with her kind of reflected back on how you felt about your own self at the moment.
Yeah. And
I was just thinking, like, we've kind of had this discussion before, but it's super interesting because, like, I don't, like, at first I was like, I don't know if it was a dude thing, and then I was like, no, because some do, but at least for the people I know, I have friends that don't do, we don't do that. We don't talk about that shit.
Yeah.
We don't, the heart-to-hearts don't exist in that way. And occasionally they do, but it's kind of like after the aftermath of drama.
Right, when there's something to talk about.
Yeah, or I suppose, like, you know, at the bottom of a couple of pints, you know, something will get discussed. But rarely will there just be like this like outreach and connecting kind of moment. It just doesn't fucking happen. And I can definitely say, like, that it super didn't happen. Like, I don't think any of, like, at least with the you know, the old group, I don't think any of us, like, had any of those kind of moments. Like, we're all friends, but, like, didn't have these types of talks unless something went down, unless there was a catalyst for it.
Yeah.
It was just not going to happen out of the blue. And yeah, that's pretty much was like my regular. So, I remember just being like, wait, like, what do you, like, how do you even get into that zone, you know, or whatever? And then it was just like, yeah, there's different types of friendships. That's the flavor of one of them, you know. Currently, I have a handful of friends that I do have that with, but I guess it's almost like it was set up by the fact that, like, I needed people to talk to, you know, and, like, people that have been through similar things were able to, like, be like, oh yeah, so this is how I dealt with that. And then by sharing, you just go back and forth with, like, questions and answers about, like, oh, what was that like? And this, that. Yeah. And then before you know it, that's where you're at, you know? And, like, to be fair, I feel like the friends that I have that I do that with are mostly girls. But there's definitely at least 2 or 3 guy friends at the moment that, like, you know, we've had, like, those kinds of talks. But it definitely used to be such a non-thing in my entire sphere, you know?
I feel like that's not the first time I've heard that. and again, I'm looking at it from a gendered perspective, but I feel like I've had guy friends who anytime we hung out, that's all we talked about because they didn't have anyone else to talk about this with. So they'd be like, sorry, dude, I just like, I've been holding this in all month because I don't have any, like, I'm not going to tell my guy friends about like, what's going on with my relationship, all the touchy-feely things.
Yeah.
So,
Therapies for Democrats. That's what Dad used to say. What? Yeah. Anyway.
But yeah, so and the thing is too, okay, well, do you like that having those heart to hearts?
I mean, when I didn't have a need for them,
right,
I wouldn't have understood what the benefit was. And then after, like, feeling shitty, then I was like, oh, the benefit is very apparent here.
Right. Okay.
So, like, you're not going to need polyfilla until there's a crack you need to fill.
Yeah.
But so at that, if there's no cracks, then you're going to ignore what's the point of this product? I don't need this on my shelf anywhere, And then once there is a crack, it's like, oh, fuck. It'd be pretty nice to, hey, look, this fills that perfectly and fixes it up and dries it and smooths it over. Like, wow, what a cool product that I never had a need for until I was dealing with a cracked wall.
Yeah. And what was the transition like for you to have those changes in the nature of friendships? Like, was it hard to adapt to opening up and talking about these things when the need was there?
No, because it was with different people.
Okay.
Right? It wasn't with...
You got to build your relationship on that.
Sort of, yeah. I mean, it was with people that I was, like, obviously already friends with, but, like, it wasn't like there was enough open foundation there to, like, have that become something that was relatable for the most part and connect on and so on. And it just, it's like you just, some people you have different dynamics with.
Totally.
In this case, it just became part of the dynamics with these people.
Yeah, you guys check in with each other. What's going on?
And yeah, and it was just felt it was just more normal.
Yeah.
It would have been probably more weird to change an existing dynamic into something else.
That's true.
And I imagine that would be the same to now, to be honest. Like, if that's, like, if we're talking, if I'm talking about, like, like the guys from before, like, we're talking about, like, these super long, decade plus friendships. So it's like, that dynamic is pretty set. You know what I mean? It's where it's at. And, like, there can be changes that sort of flow into it based on things that, like, are happening, but you also are probably not going to see, like, major upheavals that, like, sort of last, because you're a creature of habit and you're going off of a decade of cues.
Yeah, totally.
It's
really hard to break that mold. How are they going to react? Are you just going to say a thing in this existing relationship and then no one's there to catch it? Or they do, like, it's almost like trying to change a relationship with a parent. You know what I mean? You have one kind of relationship and then you're trying to, I don't know, become softer or be more vulnerable with them. Sure, and then they're like, what the fuck? Like,
yeah. If you had like a distant parent, that was present but cold, and then suddenly, like, you're being like, oh, we should, like, be more warm, and it'd be like, oh, okay, let's.
I guess I love you.
There, pat on the back.
Yeah.
Like it's,
and I'm sure the same is it for the opposite. If you have something that's super, like, I don't know, always very tender and serious of a relationship, and then now you're like, hey, let's just joke around and be silly. And you're like, well, I want to talk. It might be hard to switch back.
I suppose so, though. I mean, it would be really weird if I knew somebody only in that context.
Yeah,
it'd be kind of like, that'd be a weird way to. Well, anyway, I would always want to have a casual gear with everybody I know. To not have a casual gear would be like, Jesus, that's too intense.
Yeah,
So. Yeah, but no, that's just an interesting difference in general, because like, it sounds like pretty much the people that you've known, like, for most of your life that you're friends with have always sort of had that part of it, which
I think that's very typical for girls, like kind of socialized to talk that way. Sleepovers
seems like girl shit. I don't know.
No, but even think about like a dude sleepover versus a girl sleepover.
Yeah.
Like with us, you just like stay up all night talking, sharing secrets, crushes, and then of course you're gonna watch movies, you're gonna whatever, and of course
someone's gonna cry.
Yeah, that can happen sometimes.
Did it?
I feel like it must have.
Yeah.
I don't have anything that comes to mind right now, but yeah, for sure. Have
a good cry.
Yeah, you
good
just
cry.
gotta have that good cry.
Good cry.
Happy tears.
You want to check some email?
Let's do it.
Okay. Let's see here. We got one here from Partisan. Says, "Hey, Woolie, been listening to you since early Breast Friends days, and since those days, I've regularly been drinking coffee. It caused me stress, which I quit last month. This led to anxiety, withdrawal symptoms, and now depression from reduced dopamine and serotonin. Caffeine is a fucking drug." TLDR, have you ever tried to better yourself only for it to backfire?
Huh? Oh, God. That's a loaded question.
I mean, I feel like the closest example at the moment would be attempts at weight loss. Every time they backfire, your body gets more and more resilient and just bunkers the fuck down and doesn't want to get rid of what you have. So like failing after you've lost weight and then putting it back on backfires almost immediately because your continued attempts, the effort, what used to be 100% now needs to be 150. And then eventually goes to 200. Like your efforts are no longer good enough. You have to go even harder. And then like at some points I hit a point of absurdity. And then I get so frustrated with the crazy amount required that I just get pissed off at it, you know?
I went through a period like that with mental health too, where you're just like, I'm trying so hard that me trying so hard is costing a lot of energy and I'm fucking tired. But I know if I let go, my shit's going to get worse. So it's just this weird paradox where you're just like, I'm working so hard at losing weight and it's taking so much energy, but fuck, like, if I back off, it's just going to get worse. And every new shot I give to this, it gets harder and harder.
Yeah.
No, that's true. Yeah, it is the thing.
It's rough.
Yeah.
Decaf?
Yeah. I feel like that's a good topic to read about. How do you like I drink so much coffee that like I can't even step into that world right now. Or I'm trying to think like, well, yeah, how would I react? But for me, coffee serves a different function perhaps than the writer that wrote in. Because I feel like for me, I kind of use it as a treat. It's just not like a motivating factor. So for me, I would replace it with another beverage to kind of substitute that oral fixation that Freud would say I have.
Yeah, an energy drink in the morning is like you're my like okay, like it serves the same purpose.
And maybe the only other thing I could say is that if we want to look at this like an addiction, because I mean you build a tolerance and you can have withdrawal symptoms as other addictions, it's not permanent. Like what you're going through will end, and your brain will reset itself, and you'll be able to feel that dopamine and serotonin based on like quote unquote normal
once it
cues.
resets. Yeah.
So like the hard part is behind you. You've already done the hard part. It's going to get easier.
It'd be nice if you could see those meters.
Right? Oh my God. You just have to fucking guess. It's like wizard. It's like magic. You're just, let me take the birth control pill. Oh wait, now I've gained weight and I have acne and I'm depressed. Oh, let me not do this. Oh, now I have, everything is connected.
They do that?
Because you're fucking with hormones.
Yeah.
So it can have lots of different side effects. Some people lose weight. Some people have better skin. I can't remember anymore, to be honest. But like I have a friend many friends actually, taking birth control, like just made them depressed and just feel so awful. And then when they got off of it, they're like, I feel normal again. And it's just, I think it's nuts how, or even medication, taking, let's say a daily, like neurotransmitter medication type thing. That you're just trying to set the dial on the serotonin a little higher. But then by doing that, that affects this other thing, and that affects this other thing, and that affects this other thing. And all you wanted to just be a little happier, but now you have indigestion, I don't know, or now I can't remember the side effects. But you know what I mean? It's just like your body is an ecosystem. And it's crazy that when you change one thing, like stop drinking coffee, all these other things happen.
Yeah. And knowing that it will reset is nice, but not knowing when is definitely not nice.
Yeah. Yeah, if only we had those meters, then you could like know exactly what medication to take exactly in the right moments.
Decaf. Here we got one coming in
hot.
Arian says, hi, Woolie. My name is Arian, phonetically R-E-N. And with my obligatory, before I start my question, I just want to say the work you've been doing with Woolie Will Figure It Out is incredible. And if it becomes a regular thing on your schedule, it'll definitely become a daily thing on mine. The blend of artistic and personal advice makes the podcast something really relatable and engaging to listen to. You're quickly becoming a favorite entrepreneur. Oh, shucks. Thank you very much for the kind words there. Due to the honesty and vulnerability displayed in these episodes. This makes for a convenient segue into my question for you. For context, I create different kinds of art recreationally to cool off from a pretty hectic college schedule. But in high school, I was pretty committed to writing as my career, for better or for worse. I was also horribly depressed back then. The point of telling you that is to say that on what was probably my worst day mentally, I entered a manic state and wrote my most emotionally poignant and incredible work of art I've ever created. I can barely remember how my depression felt anymore, but I'm still hung up on the feeling that my best work is behind me no matter how much I focus on making things. It'll never match that random act of my emotions. My question for you is this. How much of your work is done to express yourself versus for the sake of the art versus to create something for your audience? When you feel the need to express yourself emotionally, what are the ways you know to be purposeful with those expressions in your work? Thanks for your time. I think that looking at it as if your best work is behind you is the first mistake, because the triggers that were pulled to make you write that way in that moment, if that's how you feel about it, still exist within you. And those words and the exact raw emotions you were feeling at the time, that still exists within you, right? And like, it wasn't like you weren't possessed by a spirit that then left you and you're now no longer capable of writing in that way or writing in such a way that is equal to or greater than that moment. What you need to do, or what you probably would want to do, is find ways to like, kind of conjure up those memories and, or get into, a space where you can write through that voice, right? So writers often talk about like the different voices they take on. And I think this is exactly that moment, right? Where there is a way of learning to write in a voice that you have within you, that is not your default day-to-day, hey, this is me voice, you know? Different people have different ways of getting into that mental space. Yeah. And, it's very personal and unique in terms of what you would need to do, but you can find it. It's there. You know, it's there. So I would definitely not mark that off as something that is like, yep, that happened once. I went Super Saiyan. Now it's gone. You know what I mean? Like, it's like an external force didn't enter your body and leave it. And everything that was there at the time is still in there. And the capabilities and the potential is all still in there as well. Right? Everything you try to do, everything you create, every time you try to make something, you're adding to an experience bar, so to speak. So like that bar that exists, part of that is from this. So, to more directly answer your question, how much is done to express yourself versus for the sake of art versus to create something for your audience? Well, I can say this. Of those three things, for the sake of the art is easily the bottom of the list in terms of what I think is worthwhile for me personally. Because if you were to isolate all of these things, if you were to remove yourself from it and remove the audience from it, and all you have left is the medium, there are people that do things in that way, and like I feel like, to me, that would be an impossible way to function. I would find no joy or fulfillment out of doing something just for the sake of the medium, right? It has to be tied to something else. If doing something for the sake of the medium gives you enjoyment, then it's bringing the first two and linking them together. But on its own, it's easily the weakest of the set, right? The way it works personally for me is like, I like if I know that it's like, oh, something like everyone wants to do something that's never been done before, right? And that's fun, but like sometimes revisitations with your own perspective are fine as well. And there's different like approaches to it, but ultimately you need to do something that, like, if it's a long project, if it's something that's going to take up your time, it has to be for you. It has to be for your expression, right? And for the audience, I mean, there will be times when, of course, like if we're talking about a personal project, of course, that you're doing, or something that is like independently created, then we're talking about something that has to be for you, because the amount of work, the amount of time, the amount of hours you're going to have to spend on this thing, nothing will inspire you to continue in the worst of times than it being something you feel the need to get off your chest. If it's something that you feel no attachment to whatsoever, but you know that it appeals to an audience, then that's not going to be enough, right? That's not going to inspire you to want to do anything in the worst moments. So, if you're doing something as a part of a studio or a large company that is 100% about making it for the audience and not at all about having your vision as a part of what you're making, that's a very different story. But the context you're describing this in, what with, college and and so on, and recreational art creation, I'm going to assume that you're doing this independently. And in that context, you have to be the center of it. You have to be the majority of it. You can definitely choose to what degree you want to, remove yourself to put something in for the audience. I suggest you keep that number as minimal as possible. I think that if you're going to compromise in moments for the audience, which everyone does to a degree, and if you're going to compromise for the sake of the art, make sure that you do so, just sparingly, and you do so when necessary in the context of like your work, being completable, right? If you feel like the version of it that you need to exist is the version that requires more of your time than you possibly can give, more of your experience than you possibly can, insert into it, and like it's the difference between the project not existing and it existing, then definitely compromise towards the project existing. But you need to make up the majority of the pie.
In my class, I took an exam to build a project, and what they told us is to identify the tolerable differences. I'm doing a translation from French, but basically, what can you tolerate in terms of difference? How can you boil down the essence of your project so that all the essence is still all the stuff that motivates you and that you love, but there's going to be some stuff you'll have to negotiate to make it finish on time and to make it work. So I wonder if with the art, like translating this in the art part, or there are like things that you kind of have to say, okay, this is the essence. I can forgive if we modify this. And do you think about what you would be willing to modify before you start an art project?
Yeah. Because again, what you're willing to adjust, you have to think about all of that, not on your most like fired up, inspired, and motivated day, but on the times when you fucking hate this stupid thing and you're just so done with it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
At the moment of being pretty much done.
Mm.
You have to still be able to look at it and go, okay, but there's still this thing that's really fucking cool. And I really would like to see this happen, right?
Yeah.
If you can't find that little piece, then you're going to be completely out. You're just going to check out. And that little piece can only exist if it's for you.
Yeah.
So, how much of yourself is reflected in your work? As much as you can get away with. And at the end, a nice little side bonus benefit is that it will be uniquely yours. For better and for worse. Your voice will be your voice. You know? William says, any chance of a future LP of Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening or any Zelda title? Wrong podcast, William. Good job. All right. Raphael says, hey, Woolie, Baguette Boy here. I've been following the podcast since the beginning. I find a lot of comfort in listening to you rumble about problems that hit close to home and enjoy all the effort you put in over the years and share all the emotions about the things you like. Hell, I wouldn't be doing Third Strike Locals if you hadn't talked about it in the first place. Cool. What I wanted to ask was, have you ever felt like you were putting all your eggs in one basket artistically? What I mean by this is, have you ever felt like you're making your craft worse by doing too much of one specific thing? For context, I've been doing pixel art for 3 years now. I've never dabbled into traditional or digital art. And I feel like I'm gonna have to have a harder time evolving my craft. Hold on a second, let me reread that. And I feel like gonna have a hard time, gonna have a hard time evolving my craft by only doing one kind of art. Is my fear founded in a bit of reality, or am I being too dramatic? I've linked some examples to give perspective. May contain some not safe for work stuff. Hope you have a good day and good luck with your endeavors. You want to check out some of this art?
Okay.
We're checking out some art. That's cool.
Oh, I like that.
It's pixel art.
I really like the cool colors in it.
Yeah. Okay, this is some pretty dope ass pixel art here. Very cool. Whoa. Ooh, that's
oh boy.
That's a character I like too. Damn. Wow.
Yeah, everything's super well done.
Yeah. Never seen
Again,
it.
I'm a big fan of like blues and purples and stuff, and there's a lot of blues.
Well, this is an audio podcast, so describing the color.
Yeah.
It's pixel art.
Pixel,
yeah. Doesn't. Well, anyway, the description of it is not to the point. That's pretty solid stuff. Are you putting all your eggs into one basket? I think it's possible to do that, and I think if you're like a powerhouse at that thing, then you're just gonna keep going and be unstoppable at it in a way, and that's more than fine. Specifically when it comes to like pixel art, for example, Paul Robertson is a beast who cannot be stopped and is just gonna make pixel art and be that amazing at it, like just a train of quality. But like if you do like it, if you enjoy it, if it still gives you something, then it's not necessarily bad to look at it as like a specialized focus, because specializing gives you the ability. You're not limiting yourself creatively, because pixel art can go very, very far. It's legit digital art. A lot of the time, I will say this, like if you started drawing like traditionally, or if you have a basis in like the traditional rules of art, it helps a lot to master and learn those rules before switching to specific styles, because once you learn the rules, then you can break them.
Yeah.
Right? If you don't know the rules and then you break them, like what you're trying to convey will often fail. Or versus like
it won't be cohesive, I guess.
Yeah, knowing how it's supposed to work means you can still use the tricks that convince people of things like lighting, perspective, shading, highlights, and so on. Like you can use all of these things, proportion, you can break the rules but still understand the core of the idea and use that in your work, and it'll make it better. So I'm not sure if your history comes from that or not, but if it doesn't, you can always benefit from like studying and learning traditional methods. But if your passion is in pixel art, then I see nothing wrong with being specialized in it. You can broaden your horizons by trying to, practice and experiment in other things, and kind of just, you can do it for the sake of learning skills, abilities, and tools to bring back to your pixel art.
That's what I was going to ask, because of course I don't have a background in art, but the parallel that I have with, I guess, research, is that sometimes you can be too narrowly focused on a field, and you don't realize that there's a lot of great things going on in other fields that you can apply to yours. And usually, in my opinion, some of the biggest leaps have been when you've crossed over different things. You know what I mean? So I wonder with art, like, can you go and look into and learn different techniques, and then that's how you can make pixel art progress or grow, because now you're not just staying within that one frame of mind, but you're bringing in other tools?
100%. Okay. You learn things from different trades or different like skills, and then they're translatable 100%. I remember when I was doing 3D in college, like I was the most experienced person in like just 3D in general in our class. But a friend of mine who she was in, she did photography, and she had no experience using 3D whatsoever. And like her second project was a photorealistic chessboard. And I was like, how the fuck, right? And she's like, okay, well, the first project taught me how to just click the buttons to make the shapes. And then the second project this is where you click to put the lights down. And all I did was just take the lights that I used in real life.
Oh, wow.
And I put them in the places I would have in this fake scene, and it created these results. And I was like, Jesus fucking Christ, I'm insanely jealous, because she's like, yeah, I know how to light a scene. And, and like, yeah, what is photorealism if not just lighting, predominantly, and then like your solid textures, right? So, it just translated so perfectly one-to-one on it that she had zero trouble adapting. Like she instantly got it, and she didn't know or wouldn't have known that was what it was. But when she went for it, it was like, holy shit. Oh yeah. You know? Learning to paint, acrylics, you approach a canvas in such a way that like you have to layer on your base tones. You layer on like just like you layer on the bottom colors basically if you're painting like a sky, and then you work your way up to the lightest ones, and then you can go back in and put some dark spots in certain areas and blend them up again, right? So it's basically like the description I'm making of like blending, like a generic middle tone to like with highs and lows here in different places and some clouds over there or whatever. When you're doing pixel art, you're doing the exact same thing, right? You're going to click bucket fill an area, and then you're going to start adding variation to it and put a highlight here and a low light there and start blending around it. The only difference is instead of using a paintbrush, you're going to be like literally dot by dot filling out a grid, you know? Understanding what that sky should look like when you stand back at a distance means that when you get up close and you're working with pixel art on it, like you'll have the same feeling for where the sky should start fading out and where the sun should start fading in, on like a sunset or something like that. Like there's these things that just like translate across, right? And you definitely can and should expand outward to make what you're focused on better, right? But don't see it as abandoning what you're focusing on. You're literally just improving it, especially if it's where your passion is, if it's what you want to do, and like open your horizons while keeping your eye on your specialized lane. And, I think that's a pretty solid way to go.
And do you ever struggle with putting all your eggs in one basket?
Yeah, I do.
Really? That's so weird.
Yeah, who would have thought?
Yeah.
Right? It's almost like, thank you for reminding me, actually, because I was gonna like say that, like, yeah, that's actually the entire thing. Like, this fucking podcast exists by nature of me trying to spread out that basket some. And you know, if I didn't have, if I didn't spread out as much as I did, then, like, you know, when things worked out, like I would have been way worse off trying to be stuck in one's area of internet stuff. And then, like, when that fails, then you have nothing else to do. You have nothing else to work with, right? Spreading yourself out helps a ton. And it also helps me sort of, like, figure out what I'm better at than other things.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
You know, it gives me I can get feedback on what works for me and what doesn't. And then I can, like, find those qualities and the things that I'm good at and find ways to apply them to the other projects.
Yeah, you're just exposing yourself to, like, that many more things, so you get to learn that much more about yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you sharpen the blade, and then you use that blade to help you cut other dishes, you know? Okay.
I just love that question, though, because I feel like that is, you know...
the day-to-day struggle.
Yeah.
Of my shit.
Yeah, like, that's just always what you're fighting against, because it's... You just have so many interests. And you're always struggling between how satisfied do I want to be, basically. Do I want to be unsatisfied because I'm not progressing far enough in my interests or, like, these different projects? Or do I want to be unsatisfied because I'm not doing enough stuff? I'm just focusing on one thing, but now I've let go of everything else.
And the people associated with each of these interests are all people that want you to dedicate more of your time to them.
Yeah.
Right? This is in fact, like, one of the hardest struggles with it is, like, they're all potential time sinks that give you back what you put into them. Like, this weekend was like, it's such an incredible thing to see the complete contrast of, like, the amount of people that regularly make it known that, you know, when I go to a tournament and I bump the podcast up to a Wednesday and whatever, like, there's a lot of people that are just, like, sick and tired of hearing Woolie and fighting games and all that shit, right? To a point that I actively have made it, like, I've made it almost like subconscious effort to bring up fighting games less and less, if almost barely as much as possible on the podcast, unless it's news. Yeah. You know, it really has kind of it's at that sort of point.
Gotcha.
And it doesn't affect how much people still, like, say that's all I talk about.
Because that idea is cemented now.
It's cemented.
Yeah.
Right. But it has had an effect in terms of the willingness I have to get too much into it. Because that cemented idea has brought about almost as much negative as positive in some contexts, right? But in the effect where in a moment where it, like, okay, well, this thing that I'm not into that he's into, that, like, he talks about too much that I don't know what he's talking about, has also now caused the podcast to be delayed.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So this is now a negative. And so ultimately, I would rather he just doesn't go to these events so that this doesn't happen often, right? And never mind the fact that I was participating in a season of events that's about to end after the next event, right? Coming up soon. But this was just the raw of it. And the contrast between sort of that feeling and, like, the feeling of being like, yeah, I'm away, we're not going to be able to record on a Monday like, you know, we would or whatever, and being like, yeah, that bothers people and, like, that sucks, versus the amount of people that I'm running into at the event that are like, oh, dude, are you coming to the next one? Yo, you want to run some sets? Yeah. Have you practiced? Okay, yo, let's get some good, like, okay, when you get back, you got to do this. You should lab that. And then, like, okay, yo, when's the next time? Oh, man, I'm not going to see you until then. Okay. Like,
you're disappointing someone no matter what.
The tone from everyone when I go to tournaments that I run into that I know, and even people that I'm meeting there for the first time, they're just like, yo, I'm into fighting games, love your stuff. Thank you so much for talking about them. It's a fun time. I love it. Right. This is my passion. Those people are equally as passionate about me being there doing this, whether even if it's just playing commentary, whatever the fuck. Right. It's a humongous aspect of it that I'm like, yeah, I really do care about this stuff and I do want to do this, you know? But yeah, you're gonna, no matter what it is, that's the result, you know? And I can never forget the part where it's like, to some degree, me wanting to do some Street Fighter stuff, like even though it wasn't the truth, it still was received because the way like Matt told the story about me ignoring the Kirby project was like, oh, I was too busy watching a Street Fighter stream at the time and I was too busy doing running tournaments, right? Like, that's not the events, but it doesn't matter because the cemented feeling was Woolie was too busy with fighting games to bother with this thing, right? So like, and then you remember when I was like still doing TOing stuff, like it was like, okay, I should make a decision and commit to one thing, right? And like there was a point where I'm like, let's commit to the YouTube thing. Let's make this go as hard as possible. And there was always the background passion, but you have to kind of compromise it. So it's always been the compromised one, you know? So in the moments where I give into it and don't compromise it, a lot of people are like, you hear both voices very loudly. Yeah. You know, and you have to make your choice. Yeah. Because I made my choice to continuously compromise the fighting game side of things and to like focus on the like content creation side of things, that is what I'm standing by. But it doesn't change the fact that like, even though it won't matter in a year, in the moment that it creates a delay in the regular content creation schedule, you're going to hear you're going to hear about it. Yeah. You know? But it's just, it's a very interesting thing because, I remember when I was not going to tournaments at all for a very long time. Very long time. And I didn't hear from people. Shut up, Siri.
What a noob.
But I didn't hear from people on the opposite side saying, yo, show up more, grind more, let's play. Right? Yeah.
Well, because you're not going to those events as much. So
no.
Yeah.
And then you're not hearing
it.
The other side because you're just, you're recording on a regular schedule. There's there's nothing else going on. It's regular. So it's interesting to be reminded of that dichotomy again, because that's almost where I started, you know? And I wish I had time for everything. Right? Like none of this is even getting into the other things that I ignore.
Yes. I'm just taking two
things on the table right now. And that's to say nothing of a ton of other things, including this very podcast, which this is an effort to try and work because we're recording it at a non-optimal time. Yeah. But it's the only way to make it happen on a regular basis is to just fit it where it can into the week, you know? Like, left to my own devices, I could use a fucking nap, you know, but I want to make the effort consciously to make this work. So I have to fit it in, you know, wherever I can. So yeah, anyway, all that to say that, yeah, my eggs are always overflowing into way too many baskets. And everyone around those baskets are like, yo, put some more eggs in. And I'm like, I don't have any, you know? And then there's always a basket that's just completely empty. Yes. You know? Like right now, that's probably like... No, you see, I was about to say it was like, oh yeah, like watching anime stuff, for example. Like, oh, check out this media, right? Yeah, yeah. But it's like, that's not true. I'm actively watching like 4 shows now. But I'm just not actively talking about them because I want to get through them. Yeah. You know? Before I do that. But like... It's in there, you know, but it just feels like you're never going to keep up with the people who are putting more time into these individual things than you. And you just have to kind of accept that. Yeah. Because there's no solution to it. You're not Dr. Manhattan. You're not going to split yourself into multiple people and accomplish multiple things, you know?
Yeah. Story of your life.
Let's see. Let's see here. Okay, so here's one from Tom says, "Hey, Woolie, love the show and the conversations and the discussions that come out of it. I'm mainly a musician, but I occasionally do paintings on my own, mostly abstract because of the lack of skill. But I find myself wondering if I rely too much on other people and their ideas rather than generating my own. I'd liken it to John Cleese and Graham Chapman's writing a partnership when they were making Monty Python's Flying Circus. Cleese would do the bulk of the work and Chapman would then throw ideas out of left field and make suggestions. But Chapman always struggled to write anything on his own and couldn't be the engine room for creating. Most of my successful music projects are either playing as part of a group where I can contribute ideas, but I don't have to worry about being a writer, or there's situations where someone else has provided the music and has left me to create a track out of it, kind of like a remix, but more arranged ideas into a final product. I always struggle to either generate the ideas myself or just can't seem to finish something satisfactory to a standard. Should I work more at being able to become the engine room, or should I double down and work more as someone who can interject and develop other people's ideas in collaborative settings? Thanks, from Tom." I think that's a thing that a number of people experience, actually. And there's literally another email right under it that's almost the exact same thing. Check it out. Caleb says, "Hey, Woolie, a few years ago in college, some friends and I formed a jazz quintet. Nothing special, but we started playing for college events and later on local gigs we got paid for. I loved playing for that group. Every gig we played, or even rehearsal, I came away feeling energized and motivated to play music, push myself to be better so that I could be as good as my friends. Now I've dropped out of school. My friends have graduated and moved on some different states miles away from me. Since then, I found it extremely difficult to stay motivated and focused on music. Top of working 9 to 5, I have to go to a community building at inconvenient hours to practice piano. There's only so much I can accomplish in my own room with a bass guitar and music software that I don't understand. So my question is, how do I and I hope this isn't too clone, but how do you transition from working with a group to working by yourself? For me, it's shown how much I relied on others for creative input. And sure, I can work out chord structures, but I can't improvise a melody or saxophonist like my saxophonist friend can, or keep time without being repetitive and bland like my drummer friend can. But mainly, there's a motivation to keep up and with my friends that just isn't there anymore. Any thoughts? Right. So the first question was framing it like, should I spend time focusing on this, or should I double down on working collaboratively? Whereas this one frames it as, more importantly, how do you transition to working with yourself? Right. So they've already made up their mind in the second case with Caleb. But in both of these questions, I would say that here's the thing, right? I remember when the group like broke up and I had to go about things on my own, I tried a bunch of different configurations, right? I was trying to figure it out. I continually am doing so, hence title drop. But the discovery process of what works and what doesn't work, for me personally, was something where I realized my strengths are in playing off of other people. No matter what the role may be, right? It doesn't always have to be the exact same situation. It doesn't always have to be the exact same role. When I do commentary, if the person I'm playing, I'm commentating with, is clearly a bigger hype man than I am, then I can adapt to the role of being the informative one. Yeah. If that person is way more informed, then I can adapt to the role of being the hype man. Yeah. So I know that's what I've kind of learned about myself, is that playing up off of someone just works a lot better for me. When it comes to like choosing between those things, I think, especially when it comes to music, that you just gain so much more experience and you get so much better by working with other people and by collaborating. Yeah. I think it's always beneficial. I think it's just a like XP boost weekend. You know what I mean? You just get more experience out of playing half an hour with a group jamming than you do half an hour on your own. Yeah. And if you feel that they were completing aspects of you that you were coasting on, that you didn't have to think about, then what I suggest you do is, instead of, if you have the option to, right, then you should stay collaborating, but maybe you should switch places, right? So if you wanted to, for example, not necessarily like try to be the engine room on your own, right? If you want to if you wanted, excuse me, if Chapman was struggling to write anything on his own when they were doing Monty Python stuff, then maybe you should take on a project as Chapman attempting to write while Cleese is there throwing in the left field punch-ups. So in other words, continue collaborating with somebody, but swap roles. Do what they were doing and have them do what you were doing, right? And play to the opposite of your strengths as you use the time that you're jamming, that you're practicing, that you're collaborating to experiment, right? And you can then, by swapping angles on this, still get the benefit of working collaboratively with a team, still get all that experience, but also hone and sharpen the aspects that you were ignoring otherwise. Things you didn't have to think about, now you do, but you still have someone else to bounce ideas off and support you.
And you still have that expert, that person who's really good at that one thing. They can still guide you, even if you're going to be doing...
Totally.
You're putting on different shoes this time.
Exactly. And like, you can literally help each other do the job in each other's shoes by making suggestions, right? But I think that's such a beneficial thing, is literally like, continue to collaborate, continue to jam, continue to work with others, but swap the responsibilities around instead of staying safe and comfortable and allowing other people to do the stuff that you know is covering your blind spots.
Yeah.
Start working on your blind spots while people are covering the spots you're confident in.
Yeah.
And then you actually, it'll be interesting because...
Challenge each other.
Yeah. And you'll see something that you're like, well, I know I'm good at doing this part. Let's see what he does with it. Whoa, he did something completely different. You know what? I don't like what he did as much, right? I would have written it completely differently. And I know that I'm a better writer, but let's see what I can do given that his writing is not what I would have done. Let's see if I can make this other aspect of it like cover for that in a way, or build up to it, or adapt to it and fit it perfectly. Challenge yourself. Exactly. You know, that's the best way to go about it. And, you know, in terms of not having the option, right, like Caleb was mentioning, or in terms of making your decision to like, how do you learn to transition to working alone? I tried doing a bunch of things. I gave a bunch of different parts of it a shot. You know, after a handful of different versions, I came to the conclusion that I'm like, no, I want to work with somebody, and my best stuff is going to be working with somebody. I'm not Bill Burr. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, it's going to work best bouncing off of someone else for me. So, and it took a couple of tries of doing it solo to figure that out. And now I'm trying to implement what I've learned into everything I'm working on. So, give it a shot, see what happens, and then take notes on where you're at after a couple, and error correct. You know, ready, fire, aim, fire, aim, fire, aim, fire, hit.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that's a really interesting question in terms of how much do you challenge yourself? How much do you play to your strengths? Because I've definitely gone through obstacles like that where it feels like the right thing to do is to challenge yourself. But I think I've ended up settling on playing to my strengths. And that job, that call center job, is like a perfect example where I felt like I can't leave this on a low note. I need to get over this obstacle. That's what you have to do in life. And what made me happier was to leave that and realize I'm not a fucking salesperson. That's not who I am. Why am I going to fight against this thing that I'm not? So, or another thing is writing. It's like for school, it's very hard for me to do it alone by myself with no support, just trying to find the motivation. It would be great if I could do that. But what I found best is to work in a co-working space with other students who are working on the same thing. And yes, it does take more energy and I have to go all the way, you know, across town. But all this to say, I think I've settled on also just trying to do what works for me instead of fighting that.
Totally. That's the best way to go about this.
Yeah.
And it's never a waste of time to learn more about yourself. You know, even in the end, if the thing didn't work out the way you expected it to, because you're like, oh shit, I thought I was capable of handling this, but I couldn't. You've now learned what you're capable of.
Yes. Now I know what to avoid. It's just as important to know as to what you need to do. In the sense of like, it's almost like in research when you say, oh, I got negative results, like that it didn't support my hypothesis. That's just as important to know as to know the things that support your hypothesis.
Yeah. You're a freshman. You drank till you got sick. You barfed everywhere. Now you know your limits.
Exactly. That's good to know.
Set your bar.
Yes.
If you go past them another time, okay, but you know where they are now.
Yeah. You
know where they are. Third time, you're fucking up. You know exactly what you're doing. You know, But that's it. Use that notch. You know. One more from Tristan says, "Hey Woolie, been on a slow binge of the channel and podcast for about a month now. Started listening to WWFIO a couple weeks ago and decided to write in. One of your previous, why'd that come out that way? One of your previous episodes, I think it was the first solo one, you mentioned it was a bad idea to talk about your stuff because people you speak to, or rather with people it's... On one of your previous episodes, I think it was the first solo one, you mentioned that it's a bad idea to talk about your stuff with people because you will lose your motivation to work on it. I agree, as this has happened to me, but as a writer, I need to eventually have someone proofread my stuff to make edits for an audience rather than edits for myself. Do you have any advice on who to show your stuff to when you need to know how it looks in someone else's eyes? Okay, so when I say not to do that, I don't mean absolutely everyone, right? You definitely, if you have somebody that you know knows writing maybe as much as, if not more than you, or if someone that is a professional, if you have anybody that you think will give you, anyone whose advice and analysis and critique you trust, right? You definitely should confide in that person if they're willing to give you their time to do this. An editor has to see the work that a writer does before the public gets to it, right? So I'm not saying have no editor. Definitely have someone to run this by.
Is there a right moment? In the sense that you don't want to lose motivation because you've gotten the recognition from other people. So do you have to do a certain amount of work first before you show other people?
I mean, upon completion of what you would consider like a self-contained like moment.
Okay.
Whether that's, if you think a chapter, an arc, if you think the entire thing, if it's a short story, I don't know, right? Okay. It depends on your project, but it's up to you to decide when you're ready to show it to somebody. Like you will hit that moment, you know, but if you need direction, if you're like, whatever you're looking for, right, show it at the point at which you want to confirm those thoughts. And, yeah, you can get somebody to absolutely bounce that off of during the process. But like, I think the whole robbing yourself of the motivation thing is like the byproduct of talking to a lot of people and sharing those ideas and getting a lot of that feedback. And then being like, oh man, I don't even want to bother anymore. Right. Like, you want everyone to know about it. So by telling everybody about it, then you're going to get that feedback and be like, oh, okay, well, they know, so they know I'm cool. You know, they know I thought of the cool thing. Yeah. That's not the same as talking to one person who can give you good criticisms, constructive criticisms. Yeah, if you have anybody in your life that can do that, then use that person, especially if, again, they're willing to give you their time. If you don't have anybody like that, I know that there are literally subreddits for this exact purpose, right? Writing prompts and things like that exist. And people that do just red penciling critiques of other people's drawings exist. Like, there are subreddits of people that are creative, that are like just kind of throwing it out there to see what other people that are in this medium can help with, that are not necessarily going to be the same full audience that is the rest of the world. And I think you can do that by making a thread and finding a couple people online to help you with those criticisms if you can't find anybody personally around you that can do it. But you have to run it by somebody. You should, you know, there's tons to benefit there. And running it by that one person is not going to rob you of the motivation.
Right. And usually once you start something, human nature is to, animal nature is to continue and to not want to stop once you started. So I imagine it's also a question of timing. If you tell someone before you've even really started, then perhaps that's where it can rob your motivation. But if you've already started and then you share with someone, perhaps it won't have as big of an impact because the motivation to keep going from what you've already got might override that.
Absolutely. If you show them a pilot chapter and they love it and they like, this is fucking rad, I want to see where it goes. And you're like, oh yeah, got to get that shit done now. You know, like that's a huge drive. Or if they even like, you know, help you breadcrumb ideas that you can connect things back to, right? Because if you're writing in such a way that you have like prompts that are going to be like attached in the future, like fish hooked in the future, you know, then like if they help you with some of those, then like you're going to naturally want to follow up on those threads. So, yeah, if you show it if you talk about it before anything's even done, that's a different space.
Yeah.
You know, to fucking throw your ego into than at a page that exists, you know?
Not the same beast.
At all. So, yeah, okay. I'm good with that.
Cool.
I feel that's satisfactory.
That was a podcast.
It was. And with that, that's 2 in a row.
You
and
did
that
it.
means consistency.
You're figuring it out.